Capital One Orange Bowl, also being played on Saturday, December the 30th. This one at 4 p.m. on ESPN. It is number 6 Georgia, a 14-point favorite against number 5 Florida State. They played at Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens, Florida. So, talk about a war of attrition. Good hell. So, it has been a bit of a development. We haven't talked a lot about this because we've been picking our spots with the portal. The second we record it, the second we hit publish, that's the second it all goes stale. And there is new information to overwrite the old information. It's very difficult this time of year to stay up to date, especially in an on-demand world with all of the podcasts, all of the transfer portal stuff that is going on, right? Georgia has so many guys transferring out. It is remarkable. And I saw that there have been comments online from guys like Aaron Murray.
I saw the Aaron Murray
What
thing.
is going on down there? What is happening?
Underthink it, Ty. Underthink it.
Well, most of the names have not been big-time contributors. Regardless of what their star ratings have been coming into school, these are not guys that have necessarily been on the field for a ton of snaps. So you've got names like Brock Vandegrift. Brock Vandegrift, backup quarterback. Obviously losing that hurts, but Carson Beck is the starter. Carson Beck could opt out and go pro if he wanted.
Good.
Have not heard that he is leaning that way at time of recording. I guess things could change. But Carson Beck, the starter, Georgia's got some depth behind Vandegrift as well. They'll be okay there. Mekhi Muse, he is their wide receiver, their punt returner who had over 750 yards. He has decided that he is going to transfer out. There are also names like Jamon Dumas Johnson. I love saying that. JDJ had 34 tackles, 3.5 sacks. People are making a big deal out of the fact that this is a guy who has thrown his name in the transfer portal.
Got hurt, I believe.
But he didn't play the last 4 games. He didn't play the last 4 games. So to that end, Georgia's been dinged up. There's a chance they could get absolutely pummeled by opt-outs. Not just Carson Beck, but Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey. Who else we got here? Nazir Stackhouse. Amarius Mims, Tate, like I could go through this list. There's like 10 names on this list of guys that could potentially opt out. So Georgia, we'll see what happens when they kick this thing off. I don't make as much of the fact that they're getting transfers and that type of stuff to contend with because I just think there is so much talent on hand that it's not going to make that big a difference. And this is still a really, really solid team on that top line. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think it's at a place as enormous as Georgia, you're going to see attrition because guys are recruited. They're told that they have an opportunity to compete for playing time, for starting spots, whatever. And Georgia does rotate in a ton of dudes at a lot of different positions, especially on defense. But the writing can quickly be on the wall with how well they recruit, that if you're passed up by a freshman and you're a junior or something like that, there's not really a huge path to playing time at that point, especially now Georgia doesn't hit the portal dramatically hard because they recruit so well, but certainly they have portaled over a couple of position players that, we're expecting to see playing time. And the other thing is, if NIL is the biggest reality, is the biggest player here in the portal and in recruiting, there is going to be a premium on the title Georgia transfer. Right?
Yeah.
That if you have interest from a bunch of other schools and you have the ability to say, well, I'm a Georgia transfer corner, I'm a Georgia transfer receiver, that just carries more weight than, all due respect, like an Arizona State transfer receiver or an Iowa transfer corner.
It's a good point.
Iowa transfer corner is pretty big. But
it's a really good point.
There is going to be that financial weight in the same way that like movies advertise from the studio that brought you so-and-so. Did they write that movie? No. Did they direct it? No. But it's from the studio that brought you Jurassic Park. So,
Right.
And I still think there is that premium in the market for Alabama transfer, Georgia transfer, Ohio State transfer, whatever. And this is an opportunity to maximize market value.
I think all that's fair. Now, on the Florida State side, I think we know that story a little bit more intimately because Jordan Travis is hurt. Jordan Travis getting hurt threw the entire playoff conversation into a big friggin' blender. And it sucks. It sucks, but it's going to be Tate Rodemaker's team. I presume he's healthy after the head injury. He will not be throwing to Johnny Wilson, who opted out. He will probably also not be throwing to Keon Coleman, who should opt out. I could also see Jared Verse and Trey Benson and Jaheim Bell opting out as well. Again, we're recording this a week in advance, so I don't know yet. I just trust that Georgia's got more depth. I trust that this version of the Florida State offense is going to have difficulty going up against some version of a Georgia defense, even if they're hollowed out by guys leaving and going elsewhere.
Yeah, and we saw a common opponent more recently for Florida State in Florida with Tate Rodemaker, and he performed admirably given the circumstances. We'll have much more time to practice. Mike Norvell will have a lot more time with Alex Atkins, the offensive coordinator, to structure an offensive game plan that plays to Tate Rodemaker's strengths and his lack of experience better than what they were preparing for. I mean, they had a few days ahead of Florida, but having these weeks of practice and sort of getting Tate Rodemaker more bowl practice reps, I think is important. But as you said, the opt-outs can come. The juice is with Florida State in terms of motivation for this game.
I'm glad you bring that up because I was going to interject and ask you if that at all shapes how you feel about this game. Because the point spread's 14. 14 is a big number in a bowl game, but you obviously understand that there are qualifiers here. Mm-hmm. Florida State absolutely cares more about this game than Georgia. They have every reason to care more about this game. The state of Florida and the powers that be, let's say, within the state of Florida, anybody who wants to get their name in the news has come out in the state of Florida and tried to make their case for either suing the college football playoff or putting Bill Hancock on the stand or whatever kind of madness people are proposing. There's a lot of hay to be made here around this Florida State story because it sucks. So we know they care, and we know that they're interested in winning this game just so they can be like, aha, we're going to hang the banner anyway. How much does that matter to you going into this game?
Some for like the first few plays that you're especially amped up to show out, but over the course of 4 quarters, the fact remains Florida State was a very, very good team this year. And Jordan Travis, and the starting quarterback, is a major reason why that was, but it's also a very good defense. They have very good running backs. The line continued to improve. You mentioned, maybe a lack of Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson. That certainly doesn't help. Maybe Jaheim Bell too. But I don't know that when Georgia played against a definitely good team, did Georgia separate themselves? Like, you can say Ole Miss is definitely good. They separated from Ole Miss. Beyond that, early on, I'm not going to hold Auburn and South Carolina. That's the first month of the season. But, they lose to Alabama. They turn the ball over too much at inopportune times against Georgia Tech, who's not all that great. I think Florida State is on a level that's still, even with Tate Rodemaker, above everything but Ole Miss and Bama. I don't know. So I think I'm going to take points here because of the defense involved with Florida State. We'll see what that actual defensive 2 deep looks like. But if it's vaguely where it's been this year, I think Florida State can cover that number. Yeah, I'm going to take the points.
I'm staying away from that. It feels like a really high point spread to me. And I don't think they make it that high unless they know something. And I don't think Tate Rodemaker is going to have a whole lot of success going up against this Georgia defense. Like the Georgia defense,
totally fair.
We can talk about guys transferring out. And there are a lot of guys that are transferring out.
Yeah,
there are. And some of them have played more significantly than others, but a lot of these guys have played like 39 snaps on the season. That being said, the Georgia defense and the way that I think Kirby is able to build this thing in a sustainable way so that it's dominant every year, they rotate almost more than any other team in the country. So you've got a lot of guys that come in, a lot of guys that go out on a play-by-play basis. That's how they build depth. That's how they build just this machine that is always good on defense year in and year out. So to take a few guys out of that, maybe that impacts their ability to play at such a high level, to stay fresh when they're out there. I don't know. I don't think as highly about Tate Rodemaker. I mean, he's going to get the start. He knows the system, but we've seen him in very limited action. And it's just, he is not Jordan Travis. He isn't.
No, and look, this is also probably more for Georgia than for Florida State, right? Florida State, there's a narrative involved. Georgia, you can very comfortably say is likely one of the 4 best teams in the country with how they played all season long and just barely lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game. This might be more of an audition for Georgia players that are on the roster, that are looking at what the incoming portal class and recruiting class looks like. And you're just like, I need to show out against a team like Florida State on a stage like this. So while the narrative juices with Florida State, you can understand why certain players who perhaps weren't getting a ton of playing time and might be sort of not on the chopping block, that's sort of a crude way to put it, but like being evaluated for their futures at Georgia might be playing extraordinarily hard and might be really locked in during bowl practices and, are a key part or a key cog or a key part of the engine that has Georgia winning this game by 3 touchdowns. So I understand that part of it.
33-14 for me, Georgia.
Okay.
And I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant on that, but that's if I were picking a score, I'd go something in that neighborhood.
I have 24-13. They cover, but lose.